So the whole idea of these sessions is really to see what it's like to work with the Apient platform. There are many, many, many years of development into this incredible platform that we have that allows you to build integration software, we call it now, more than just integrations. And the best way to really see how the platform can shine is really to see someone work with it firsthand, unpolished, right? So no rehearsal, unpolished. Watch us work with the platform. We're going to try to accomplish something. We're going to set a problem that we want to resolve, and we're going to go at it. And it's going to go really fast. The good news is you're going to have a recording. So, take the recording, and if you want to see how we've done something, go back to the recording. That's really the best way to learn. But in order to keep this really dynamic, I want to move as fast as I can, and I want to run into some roadblocks and show you how I overcome them. So we've got a bunch of folks here that I recognize, some customers and some not. And so let's just get started. All right. So what is the challenge that we're trying to resolve today? Let me just share my screen. All right, so this is something that I did actually this week, which I thought would be a really cool way to demo the power of the platform here. We have an integration with Shopify and MindBody, which is pretty extensive. But through our testing, we need to create orders in Shopify on a regular basis. And so when we create orders in Shopify, it's fantastic. This is a development store in Shopify, and we can create as many orders as we can, up until 50 orders. And it's one of the big frustrations that a lot of Shopify developers have, is they cannot create more than 50 orders in their development Shopify store. So they're forced to create a new development store every time to create another 50 orders. Very frustrating. It's been frustrating for us as well. So then I decided, well, why don't we just do this through API? Why don't we create a spreadsheet, right? A spreadsheet that you would be able to input your order with a couple products with different discount codes, different taxes and so forth. And you would be able to process those orders, right from Smartsheet to Shopify. And this could be anything else, right? This could be a form. This could be, right now I'm choosing Smartsheet. So in order to do this, I thought, well, the best way to do this really is to use an automation we've already built, which is the MindBody to Shopify orders. And I'm going to strip out all the MindBody pieces and replace it with a Smartsheet. Okay. So first, let's take a quick look at the automation. So when I open it up, you'll see that it does quite a bit of stuff, because you've got to account for different taxes. You've got to account if a product is even in Shopify before you add it. You've got to decide if it's a product or a service. So there's a lot of stuff that you need to do for this particular automation between MindBody and Shopify. Now remember that what I'm going to do here is not MindBody to Shopify. It's going to be just Smartsheet to Shopify. So all I really need to do is identify everywhere there is Shopify. I'm probably going to keep. Okay, so this is adding a customer and so forth. Anything else I'm going to get rid of, right? And anything, and then I'm going to have to add a Smartsheet component to it. So at the end of it, I'm going to end up with an automation where you can create orders between Smartsheet and Shopify. So how did I do that? So let me just zoom out here. You can see how extensive this one automation is. But we're not going to build this, right? We're going to use this as a starting point to create our automation here, okay? So let's go at it. So what I would typically do here is I would make a copy of this, right? So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to make a copy of this automation, and I'm going to name it. So there's a lot of pieces to it. I'm going to name it process Smartsheet orders in Shopify. So let's call this process Smartsheet orders in Shopify. Okay. And I'm going to keep this on here because I'm going to need it to see where it's mapping. So this is the trigger here. So this is our trigger, but we're going to have a different trigger. It's going to be a Smartsheet trigger. Okay. So first, let me just make a copy of that automation. I'm going to save it, keep it off. So now I have two automations. Pretty easy. This is the one I'm going to modify. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is I need to connect Smartsheet because I don't have Smartsheet connected here, right? So this is my Smartsheet here. So that's pretty straightforward. So we're going to go and we're going to add a Smartsheet. And you don't see the pop-up that I have here. Actually, let me share my whole screen so you can see the pop-ups. You see the whole thing. There you go. So here it says connect Smartsheet. All right, Smartsheet's connected. All right, so let's get started. We have Smartsheet connected. We have Shopify connected. We should be able to make this a Smartsheet Shopify. So the first thing that I'd like to do is strip away everything that is not going to be used in this automation. So a really pretty straightforward approach to doing this is to do searches for everything that has Shopify in it, right? So let's just, you can actually do a search by right-clicking here. What happens if I do a search for Shopify? Well, it picks up everything that has the word Shopify in it, right? So that's not necessarily what I want here. So the other thing I could do is just kind of take a look at what's going on here. So here I'm going to say, find location by name. Okay, something I'm going to need. So I can either select this, copy it, or move it. So I'm just going to select it here and put it to the top. All right, so that's done. Now let's see what else I can do. So first we find a location by name. Oh, we need to add customers. So add or update a customer. Okay, let's select this and move it here. I can move or copy. You can also select more than one, right? I'll just show you this real quick here. So I could select everything here and I could have moved everything up there, right? But in this case, I just need one at a time. So I'm going to unselect. All right, so customers, then what else needs to be done? Well, order initialized. So definitely need this. I'm going to copy this one instead of moving it just to show a different version. And I'm putting in that order because it is the flow. First, you find the location, then you make sure there's a customer. Now we're going to make sure that we can initialize the order in Shopify. So let's see what else. Any other Shopify logo? Then after that, we have discounts. Let's account for discounts as well. So I'm going to take this here. Oops, and then paste item discount. Okay. What else do we have? We have order, we have discounts, we have, let's do products now. So items that are going to go in the order. So let's see, what else do we have in here? Initialize. This is a pretty big automation to start from. Okay, find product by SKU. So I can copy that. I think we're almost done here. And now we're going to look for inventory, I believe. So we want to adjust the inventory in Shopify as well. So let's do this here. Right, so let's say I didn't know where this was, right? I'm going to show you the search feature now because that's what I would typically use at this point. I could do search for inventory, and here I can search an action name, or I can search a setting, or I can search a field mapping here. I'm just going to search an action name. So here I found the inventory, so I'm just going to copy that. All right, and okay. And then we have, it's red because it needs mapping, but we'll deal with that later. I think I'm going to search also for, let me see, I have a list here. line items. So line item. So I need to add a line item. All right. We're doing quite a bit of stuff here for this order. Taxes, we need to handle taxes as well. So let's do a search for tax line. Here it is. So here, if there's a tax, we put order line item tax, copy, and then okay. Inventory we did, line item, tax we did, and then finally we need to create the order in Shopify. Create, I think we have no space here. So there's a bunch of creates here, but I know it's on the bottom here. We have create order in Shopify. So I'm just go to the bottom of the automation. Here it is. So here we create the order right here. All right, so here we create the order, we do a total, we also add a transaction in case the order was paid or partially paid, and then here we update it as fulfilled. So here actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this and everything below. So I'm moving or copying a whole bunch of actions here. So I'm going to do that, paste items, all the items that I've selected. So you can see how you can select one or you can select more than one, okay? All right, so I think we're done here with at least getting the initial sequence from finding a location to customers, to line items, to taxes, to discounts, and so forth, all the way to creating an order and then paying an order and then fulfilling an order, okay? I'm gonna ungroup this here and I'm gonna select everything below, right? So now I'm going to select, you can see what I'm selecting here. I'm selecting everything else that is in automation and I am going to get rid of it. So delete selected items. Okay, so what I end up with is basically everything that I've copied from that crazy awesome automation into just this one. And I'm going to get rid of this here. I'm going to get rid of this here. I'm going to remove field mapping. That's fine. I'm going to move this up here and I'm going to actually get rid of this conditional just to keep it really simple. So find the location, then we update a customer, then we initialize the order, then we add a discount, then we find the product by SKU, then we update the inventory, and then we add an order line item, and then we add a tax line item, we create the order, we add a transaction, and then we fulfill the order. I'm just going to save here. It does auto save, but I'm going to save. Actually, I can't because some of these things need to be filled here. So this is required here. I'm going to put 1. Let's take a look at all the required fields. So here, again, they've been orphaned. So some of these things are kind of like, hey, you need to give me some information here. I'm going to put a 1 here just so I can save it. Just for the sake of the demo here, put a 1 here. Was there anything else? Oh, tax rate. Okay. Inventory. Okay. Product SKU. Discount. Okay, we're good here. And location. Okay. So I think I got it all. So building. So we have versioning on everything. So I'm actually going to describe what I've done. Stripped unnecessary actions from old MBO automation. Now this is really cool because you can actually revert into a previous version. So here I can come here and look at my versions, right? I had the initial one and then you can go back in time if you want if you don't, hey, it used to work before I did this, you can actually go back to it. Okay. All right, so now I have an automation with a trigger that I don't want, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start adding the Smartsheet component to it. So to do that, I created a Smartsheet here, pretty straightforward. Here, I'll show you what it has in it. And it has process order as a flag or as a check mark, so I can control what goes and what doesn't. Processing status to give us a response as to what was done. First, last name, email, location, financial status, and all the stuff that I would need to process an order. And then what I did here is I added two items, okay? So let me see right here. Yeah, so I have SKU 1 and then SKU 2. Now, obviously, this is just a flat spreadsheet. This could be coming from anything. It could come from a form with an array of products. It could come from another shopping cart, like MindBody. It could come from anywhere, okay? So the first thing I need to do is I need to create a trigger that monitors new items or new rows that are ready to be processed here. So let's do that. So I'm just gonna come here and create a trigger, Smartsheet. And I'm going to choose the updated row just because I may want to reprocess the same row. And here are the sheets that are going to come up. And here I'm going to look for Shopify, create Shopify orders. That's my Smartsheet. So the first thing it does is that it gets all the fields. There you go. All right. So now we have our Smartsheet. So now all we need to do is really start populating this stuff down here. So one of the things I can see is this still linked to any of these actions? And I don't think it is. Let me see. If I say find items mapped to this, okay, there's just one order line item. So you can see that in here, we have actually just quantity is still linked to it, okay? No biggie, because I could come here and then replace it with a Smartsheet one, but I'm gonna be very meticulous and go through all of the fields that I want to replace. So I'm just going to remove this. And I'm going to say remove the field mappings. Okay. So let's start with the beginning. So find location. So location here, I can actually see it right here from the Smartsheet location name, or I can actually come here, point to this, do a search for location, and here's my location name. Okay. And this is how I'm going to start populating all these things. All right, so email, I'm just gonna come here, type email. Here's the email from the Smartsheet. First name. Last name. Let's see if there's anything else I want. Email, first name, and last name, that's good enough. All right, order initialized. So just needs a customer email. Okay, and let's see what else was already mapped in here. So we have customer email, referring site, instead of MindBody, we're gonna say this is a Smartsheet, okay? Source name, Smartsheet, and I'm gonna add a tag to the order called Smartsheet. This is gonna be in USD, and that's good enough, okay? All right, then we have order add discount code. So, okay, so the order ID, what is it? Well, the order ID is the order we just initialized. Okay, so I'm gonna come here and I have an order ID. The code is gonna be called whatever we want, Smartsheet code. Okay, the discount amount, we're just gonna say 1. And then here, the type of discount, I believe I have that in the Smartsheet as well. Discount type. Yeah, discount type here. So in this case, it's going to be a fixed amount because you have different types of discounts you can have. All right. find product by variant SKU. So what is the first product SKU? Have that in my Smartsheet. We're going to say SKU1. Done. Update inventory quantity. Okay. So what's the location ID? Well, the location ID comes from a previous action, which was find location by name. Okay. So here's my location ID. The inventory item is the inventory item for the SKU that I just found. So inventory ID is right here. And the adjustment, the amount to adjust to available inventory, that is going to be calculated. So right now I'm going to put 1 for, or -1, but then actually, tell you what, I'll make the mistake and then I'll fix it later. So here, quantity, and say, hey, we sold quantity 1, and that's it. Okay. Order at discount, find product by SKU, update inventory, quantity, order. Okay, now we have to add the line item. So same thing, order ID. Now, one of the things I could do here, if I wanted to speed up, if a lot of this stuff was similar to a previous action, if I knew that a lot of the fields that I've mapped in update quantity here, so you see update quantity, I've mapped location ID, inventory ID, and all that, you can actually copy field mappings from one and paste them into another field mapping. Now, this is not going to be 100% accurate here because we don't have similar ones, but you could do that. Order ID, I'm just going to take the order. Variant ID in Shopify, so that's the SKU. And there is so this is find product variant by SKU. So the ID that's going to be emitted from that is going to be the variant ID, okay? And then quantity. Good. And that's it. We're going to keep that here. All right. So where are we? Find product, update inventory, order line item, order, add line item tax. All right. So let's add the tax. Same. So here I could actually copy and paste because it's the same order ID. So here I could copy field mapping and then paste, and at least the order will be pasted already, right? So if it finds anything common that it needs from the one that you copied from, same field names, it will paste them for you. So title, I think I call that title. Yeah, text. No, that's order line item tax title. Yeah, text title. And then the price, which is really the tax amount. So tax amount 1 and tax rate. So tax here, tax rate 1. Good. Almost done. Tax, and then order create. So now we're creating the order. So this is the order ID from the order that was initialized. Okay, so order initialized, order ID. But now when we create the order, we're going to have a new order ID that Shopify will generate for us. So now moving forward, add transaction to order. I'm not going to link to this order ID anymore. I'm going to link to the order ID that I just created. And if you read the API doc, you'll see why that is, okay? The type of order, I think it's always a sale. I think, yeah, I just didn't change that. This is just a type is sale, and gateway is going to be Smartsheet in this case. All right, so add a transaction, and here we need an amount. So how much did we get paid for that order? And here I can just say amount paid. All right, so that's the transaction. And then finally, fulfillment. Let's fulfill the order. So same thing here. This is a different order ID. This is the order ID from the order we just created. Location ID, remember that location thing? Well, we got the location from here. Location ID. And here, I think we're just fulfilling the whole order. Okay, good. So I'm finished with the mapping now. So let me just save that. Again, you can come back here, look at your versions, right? I just finished mapping. If I want to go back in time, I could do that, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is, actually before I turn it on, is change the trigger here. So I don't want this to trigger every single time. I only want it to trigger, I'm gonna add a filter, when I check it to process the order. Okay, so here, all I have to do is look for process, I think it's right here, process order equals true. So true means there's a check mark, okay? That's the first thing I want to do. But the second thing I want to do is once I process the order, I want to then uncheck the check mark, and I want to put, and I'm going to put nothing in there, I want to put the result of what I've just done here. So as you complicate this, or as you make this automation more sophisticated, you may want to report different kind of processes or different kind of results. Either it errored out, or it updated the order, or it processed the order, or it paid the order, or whatever. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to add another action at the bottom here. I'm going to go for Smartsheet. I'm going to say now update row, right? I'm going to update the row that just triggered the whole thing. So here I'm going to choose the Smartsheet. So here it was called the Shopify create order. Okay. All right, so fields come back. So it's asking me for a row ID. Well, the row ID is the row that triggered it all, right? So here I have a row ID. The process order, I'm going to say false. So that's unchecking the check mark. I should spell this properly. Okay. And what did I call it again? I called it processing status. Right here, I'm going to say order. And then here I could always put the order number. So here I could just say order ID created in Shopify on, and I could just put a date and time. So here I could just say the time it ran. I'm going to do a custom date and time. Oops, I'm going to do a custom date and time. And here I'm going to say, all right, let's make it pretty. So today is Friday. So Friday is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 Friday. Month in full name 1, 2, 3, 4. So what is the month? November. And day in 2 days. Day, and then here I'm going to say at, and here I'm going to say the time, the hour and the minutes. So here I'm going to say hours with leading 0. So we're just going to say hours at hours, and then here minutes with leading 0. I think I got this right, maybe not. Okay, so now I have a custom date and time that is going to update. Let's save that. Okay, I'm just gonna finish because I'm gonna think I'm finished. I'm not even close to being finished, but for the sake of the demo here, I'm gonna say I'm finished, right? So I'm gonna say, okay, let's process my first order. So here are my Shopify orders, okay? And I'm hoping that a new order is gonna show up here with the information that's entered here. And by the way, I've only done 1 SKU for now. If I have more time, we could always do a second one and I can show you how to do that. But I really want to leave some room for Q&A if there's any. So, all right, so I'm going to run it first once, and then you're going to start getting some errors. And this is really where the fun begins, because when you get errors, this is when you refine your integration. This is when you discover stuff. I run it once to start the database at 0. So now it saw all the rows and it said, okay, I ran it. Actually, when I turned it on the first time, it ran it and it said, okay, these are the rows. If anything changes moving forward, I will trigger, okay? So now I'm gonna make a change. I'm gonna say process this order. All right, so now I'm gonna run it. Now this is the trigger here, you'll notice is what we call a fetching trigger, right? So it runs every 15 minutes with your power plan. If this was a webhook trigger, it would run automatically, which means Smartsheet would push the data to us as soon as something is changed. But in this case, it's going to run in 4 minutes because it runs every 15 minutes. But you can run it manually. I'm going to do this, and let's see what kind of error we get. All right. Now, one of the really, really powerful aspect of Apient is our whole history recreates the diagram and then shows you how the data flowed through all of these actions, okay? Not only that, so it gives you the error, but it also shows you exactly where it errored out and why. So I can actually move my mouse here, see what I got from Smartsheet. I can keep on moving my mouse and see, okay, it order initialized. So it did create an order, and this was the output. All right, I added the item. Everything was good up to here, but then on order create, it gives me an error. And the error here, required parameter missing or invalid receive while data load. And what it was missing was order ID. This is from order create. All right, what did it miss? I missed something, and that was
the error message says.
Ooh, here's the voice of Robert.
What's it says right there, shipping address at the top.
Billing, shipping. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right here. This is the error we got. We're missing a shipping.
No, well, it's at the top. Right there, error, shipping address.
Okay, shipping required missing. Yeah, okay, so I'm missing a shipping address. Yeah, well, that makes sense. So let's fix it. So did I put a shipping address in there, or did I forget to map it? Let me see. Is it because it's a new customer? Okay, I guess I didn't. Interesting. Maybe because this is a new customer, it didn't use the customer's address. All right, well, let's see. So order initialized. Oh, yes, yes. I had that in there before, and when I moved it over, I didn't have it. So let's see here. All right, so hold on one second. All right. Yep. Create order Shopify. I'm deploying one that works so I can compare it. All right. Okay. Let me split my screen now. Okay. I'm going to reshare my whole screen now. Okay. So I had one working, and that's because if you look at this here, this is what I ultimately want this to look like at the end. In the order initialized, like Robert said, here I had, oh, okay. So it was expecting a billing address, first name, last name. Okay, it was expecting all this stuff. Okay, so let's do it. So it didn't need necessarily an address, but it needed a first and a last name in the address. I guess I missed that. Okay, order initialized. So I'm going to do this. So this is going to be the first name. This is going to be the last name. Financial status. Did we have anything here? Financial status. Oh, I forgot to map that as well. Might as well do it. Okay, and then referring site, Smartsheet. Shipping address, first name. Oh yeah, shipping. All right, so shipping address, first name, it's going to be the same first name, last name, last name. And I don't think it needed anything else. Source tags, right? So let's see what we got mapped here. First name, financial status, referring site, shipping address, first name, source name. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so when this happens, you save, you make your fix. Fixed, missing, shipping address in order, initialize action. Okay. Let's look at that error. So this is where it failed again here. So at this point you could retry, and you could retry from the start. So it gets all the info again. There you go. And now we have an order in Shopify. So let's take a look. Let me just share this one screen here because it. All right, so did we get that order? Open orders, maybe. Right here. Got it today, 138. So here's our order. Weightlifting belt with a discount, $49, Pennsylvania tax, and so forth. So really, when you look at it, that's what it did. Now, didn't get as many errors as I was hoping to get for the demo, and I have a little bit of time here. I'm going to try to make a new one, but this time I'm going to break it and show you how you can account for it, okay? Oh, and by the way, this was checked. Oh, and processing status did not update, and that's because... Oh, is it because I didn't refresh? Yeah, it is. It did update. So I put this information in the processing status with all the information. So this is order number created in Shopify on Friday, November 12th at, did I get the time right? 1:38. Okay, I did. All right, so let's do a second order. But this time I'm going to break it. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to keep this here, but this time I'm going to put no tax. So tax, total tax, nothing. Tax included, that doesn't matter. And yeah, so there's no tax in this one, okay? So let's save that. So I'm going to check that and save it and rerun it. So now we have the second order that's going to process. And I want it to break so I can show you how you can account for this. So here we're going to say execute. Oh, why did it succeed? I didn't want it to. Let's see. I guess it doesn't fail if there's no tax. Okay. I think it fails if there's no discount. Let me see. Let me take out the discount now. Amount paid, tax, discount code. Right. If you tell it there's a discount code and there's none, I think it fails. So Let's just go to discount. No, there's no discount code here. Let's go total tax, subtotal. Oh, I did put a tax in there. And then, all right, let's try it again. If it doesn't work, we'll assume it failed, and I'll show you how you handle it. Okay, here's how you would do it if it failed. So let's say you only wanted to add a discount code if there was one, right? All you have to do is put in conditional and say here, if I get no discount code, so here I'm going to say discount code. If discount code is not empty, right, then I'm going to add a discount code. So I'm going to take discount code, I'm going to move it to the true. Okay. And here you can rename this and say discount code is not empty. Right. So this would say basically if there is a discount code, then add a discount code. But if there isn't, don't add one. So you can do this just for about everything. And you can continue with the, obviously with the conditional branch. In future training, we'll show you how to handle arrays, because you can also loop against every item and every tax, and you can get much more complex with that. So that's about that. I'm going to save that. Let's open it up for some Q&A if they have any. I've been kind of in a zone here. Let's take a look here. Ben, do we have any questions? Anybody wants us to talk about something or show something?
No, nothing so far, but people feel free to reach out with questions. We have a Q&A and a chat function as well.
Okay. So anyway, this is pretty cool because this particular thing we just built is actually kind of really handy for all Shopify developers who are not able to create orders in Shopify. It's been kind of a pain for a lot of folks. Until we have a question, I'm going to show you how to add a second item to the order. So this is the last order we created, and you can see it only has one item, right? So let's do a second item. So just go back to this here. And this would be one where I would check to make sure there is one, because if you try to add an item that doesn't exist, it's going to fail. So where do we do that? So we start here, find product variant by SKU. So I'm going to rename this one for the first one. Inventory rename 1, and line item 1, and order line item tax 1. Okay. Then I'm going to add a conditional here. And I'm going to say if let's just see, you can take the quantity too, right? Because if there's no quantity, if quantity 2 is not empty, which means there is a quantity for the second item. And by the way, this is it right here. So you have a quantity 2, right? If there is a second item, has second item, then go ahead and add it. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to select the first item actions, and I'm going to paste them here. So now I'm doing the exact same thing again, right? If there's a second item. The thing here is though, I want to make this, I like to rename them here. So when I see them through mapping, I know exactly what I'm looking at. So I'll just go through the effort to make sure that I make my actions very descriptive, because it really simplifies troubleshooting in the future. So, all right. So now I'm going to map SKU2, right? So get rid of this and SKU2. Okay, location is the same. Inventory item is going to be, oh, this is actually kind of cool. So when I copied and pasted these 1, 2, 3, 4 actions, what will happen is the relationship between these actions is going to remain intact. So as you recall, this was mapped to these two items here, to these two actions, okay? So if you look at this right here, the inventory item ID was actually coming, and I can click on this little eye here, it'll tell me where it was coming from. It was coming from here, right? Well, when I copied these 4 and I moved them here, the relationship between them is still intact. So if I look at find items mapped to it, you can see that instead of this being mapped, or this being mapped to this, it is actually maintaining the relationship between the items that I've copied. Okay, so that's really helpful when you copy whole chunks of logic with actions into new pieces, or between automations, by the way. I can actually take, you know, a whole chunk of this automation, copy it, and then move it to a different, completely different automation, or I could move it to a subroutine, but we can cover that later. Okay, so here I'm going to make sure that quantity 1 here is quantity 2. Okay, because I'm only doing the second item here. And then the tax is going to be the same. I forgot what I was just doing here. Hold on. Let me undo the yellow stuff. Okay, so I was just doing tax. I wasn't paying attention. So quantity, line item. Oh, this is not a tax. This is a line item quantity. Quantity 2. Anything else? So if I click on only map fields, this is everything that's mapped. If you click on show required fields, it only shows you what's required based on the API telling us. Okay. And then add line item 2. I've just done that. And finally the tax. So this is the tax 2. So tax title 2. You can keep it there so you don't lose track. So this is tax title 2. And then here is tax amount 1. So this is going to be tax amount 2. And then you can just move your mouse here and delete the previous one. That's very easy. All right. And so that's a second. Oh, tax rate. See, you got to check the whole thing. Rate, tax rate 2. All right. So if there's a second item, it'll go here, and if there isn't, it won't. Okay, good. Save that. Added support for second item. Very good. It's running in 54 seconds. So let's put a second item here. We have a second item. We have a first queue. And I'm going to check it and save it. Get rid of this here. And I'm going to save it. And it's running in 34 seconds, but I can run it manually. Good. Errors. Love errors. Okay. So price is empty. This action cannot be executed. All right, let's take a look at where it failed here. So it came down here. Add line item tax 1. Oh, remember how I removed the tax? Now I'm trying to add a tax rate where there's no tax. So perfect example here. If there is no tax, let me see. So this is, if you double click on the history, you can also see what you had at the time it ran. So tax rate 1, updated row tax rate 1. If I look at tax rate 1, right, I had removed the tax rate. Okay. So let's add some other logic here. We're going to say if there's no tax, don't add it, right? Because you could be selling items that don't have tax. So here, I'm going to say conditional branch. So tax rate 1 is not empty. And obviously you can rename this any way you want. Has tax 1. So we're only going to move this to true. We're only going to do a tax if there's one, but I also need to do the same thing for the second item, right? So I could technically select this and paste it here, right? It would do the same thing, but it would paste this one. But I don't want to do this because I already have one that's already mapped. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to add my own conditional. And then this one here is going to be tax 2, tax rate 2 is not empty. And you can see how fast you can work with this platform. It's like, you know, the description of the demo was, you know, build them as quickly as you can think of them. And that's really what it is. Once you get really, you know, comfortable with the platform, you can build the most sophisticated integrations and software, because you can also cache data, you can create settings and so forth. You can build some really cool stuff really, really quickly. So has tax 2, and I'm going to move this to true. Saved. And here I'm going to say added conditional to check for tax. And remember, versions, all of our versions are here. So if I wanted to go back to the beginning of the demo, I could just come back here. I'm not going to do that. All right, so let's look at the error. So remember also, instead of reprocessing it, it's waiting here. It's waiting here in limbo saying, hey, you need to do something. So you can fix it and you can just do retry. All right, other error, what do we get here? Okay, so here we got an error, has a second item. So it added the second item and then update inventory quantity. Receive 422 unprocessable. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, so why does this give me an error? Well, I'll tell you why. Because this second SKU here, right, this variant, if I open this variant here in Shopify, so let's go to products. All right, let me open this variant in Shopify. So it's a 5-class pack. That's not a product, that's a service. Okay, so because it's a service, it doesn't have inventory. So you don't track the quantity. So you can't deduct inventory from a service. You can only deduct quantity from a product, a physical merchandise, right? So how do we handle this? Well, very similar approach here. SKU 2, let's take a look at what we have in here. SKU 2, this one is a service, okay? Right, the first one was a product, but the second SKU is a service, okay? So all I have to do is look at the type, and if it's a service, I don't touch the inventory because there is no inventory to adjust. So just come back here, and I can do this for the first and second, by the way. So let's do it on the first SKU. So update inventory here. I think you start to get the idea here what I'm doing. It's really adding conditional for any time something may not be true, right? So type for SKU 1. And here we'll say if it contains service, well, I'm sorry, product, then we adjust the inventory. Okay, rename is a product. Oops. All right, before I actually move this up here, I'm actually going to copy this because I want to do the same thing here. right? I'm going to want to check if it's a product for this one as well. Okay, so here, this one I can move, only update the inventory if it's a product. So I'm going to move this to true. And I'm going to do the same thing here, but I copied a conditional, but remember it's testing on the 1, not 2. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to look for type 2 right here. All right, so if type 2 is a product, then we update the inventory, move this to true. And if type 1 is a product, we update the inventory. And I think I'm pretty good here. All right, save. Fix or added conditional to check if type is product, so I can adjust inventory. Again, go back to your error. And by the way, you can retry all errors. Be careful with that because you can have errors from a while ago and then you could be duplicating orders and all that, but which we have enough time for me to show you how to handle, make sure you don't create duplicate orders if we can do that as well. All right, so I'm just going to retry. Right here. Oh, it's retrying still. All right, looks like this time it succeeded. So let's take a look at what went through here. Came down here, found the location. You can see when you move your mouse here, shows you the Doylestown was this location. It updated the customer because it found the match. Now you could make this much more complicated if you want. Find the customer first. If there's already a customer with the email, then do something else. There's a lot of things you can do. Order initialized. Okay, so it initialized the order. Discount, there were no discounts. So you can see that it went to the left and it shows you a little one here with false. There was no discount, so no need to add a discount, right? Found the product by SKU, found it. And it said, is this a product or is it a service? Well, product contains product. So if you double click on here, you can see exactly, it says type 1 contains product, right? That's what it was testing for. So then it said, yep, there's a product. So we're going to adjust inventory by -1, which was the quantity. We're going to add the line item. Does it have a tax? No, it doesn't have a tax because we removed it. Has a second item? Yes, it creates a second item here. Does it have a tax? No. Does it have a product? No. So here we don't do an inventory adjust because this time it's a service. See, service contains product? No. So we go to the left. We add the line item here. Has no tax. Order create, transaction, and then we fulfill the order, and then we update the spreadsheet by telling it what we just did. So if I go to Smartsheet, do a refresh, make this a little bigger so we can see it. All right. So now we added a different order ID created in Shopify on Friday, November 12th at 1:59. And if I go to Shopify, I should now see my order with more than one item. Now that's interesting. It says it's partially paid. So let's figure out why that is, okay? All right, so here's the order. Is this the right one? I'm not sure now. Let's double check. This is the order ID. Might as well go look for it. So I can just put the order ID up here. Right here, that was the right one. So now we have two items. We have the merchandise and we have the service, right? But we only paid $200, even though the total was supposed to be $215. And the reason for this is because in here, I had amount paid $200, but the total was $215 for the two orders. So that's why it showed you a partially paid And the partially paid, by the way, that piece is right here, add transaction to order, right? This added $200 as a payment. We could theoretically put another conditional here and say, if there's a payment, add a transaction. If there's no payment, don't add a transaction. The other thing you also would need to do in this case, just because I know Shopify pretty well now, if it's a comped order where there was no amount, you don't want to add a transaction. So because by default, it'll say paid because it's 0. Okay. That's it. Any questions now, Pan?
No, I don't see anything that came through. No.
All right, let's take some questions from the team. It looks like we have some of our team here. Mark, any questions on what you've seen?
No, I think it's pretty phenomenal. As I've been learning with you over the last year, it's just amazing on how easy it is once you understand the platform and the logic to create something. I know I had used this to create things very similar to what you just created in order to automate some basic functionality. So I think the ability to add conditionals and logic, and it just really allows you to drill down into exactly what you want it to do.
We are paying him to say this, but we're not paying him to say this, but we are paying him. Thanks, Mark. No, I agree, man. It's insane because if you really think about what we just built here, and it's so fast and so easily. And when you do a live demo, I like to think that when you do a live demos are pretty gutsy, because when you do a live demo, you're really only using 60% of your brain because you're so self-conscious about, is this going to go right? Is this right? But I feel so comfortable doing live demos with this platform because of kind of what you said. It makes it so easy to really build complex stuff. And then the error message that come by, and then the history that comes back to you is so insightful that even if you make mistakes, like Robert jumped in and said, "Oh yeah, you forgot to." I hadn't even thought that I had to add the shipping,
Right.
right? But again, if you really think about what we just built and what it would take to build this in code, forget about it, right? And this is a super simple automation. Now, right? I'm just going to switch real quick here to go to really complex automation. So the ones that you love, because you support those the most, right? So I'm going to go to show you some different automations that we do. So this right here, doing exactly what I just did, right? I mean, we build that in no different system or no different tool. It's the same tool that I just used to do this demo, where we build these incredibly complex, integration software solutions, because to me, it's more than just integration. So looking at this here, Zoom. So here you have 9 automations, and here you have 12 automations. And these automations here do a lot of different things between MindBody and Zoom, right? We just finished one today between Zoom and Donor Perfect, where you can report, anybody who's in a Zoom webinar and answers, polls and so forth. You can report them back in Donor Perfect with every webinar they've attended and all of that. So, but just to show you kind of like the scope of what you can build, it's pretty mind-boggling. So I'll just switch here to. I'll just Google MindBody and Zoom. And this app right here, which really at this point, this is an integration app. This is a full-fledged app. What does it do? Well, it does a lot of stuff, right? It creates Zoom meetings, it modifies them. You can sync enrollments, custom branded emails. Well, that page went nuts when I just did that. That was really cool. Okay, so you can create custom branded emails that go to each individual. You can create SMS that go to anybody who is about to attend a class. That whole thing, which is probably one of our most popular, solution for MindBody businesses, was built exactly the same way I've just did this demo for this last hour. And so if you look at, create or update a Zoom meeting, you can start recognizing the same logic in how we build these things. So let's just open it up. And we also group things, so we hide them. just because they can get a little hard on the eye when you have so much functionality. But if I take a look at this one here, take a look at this, right? All of this functionality here. And I'll open it up. Let's expand this. Very similar approach in thinking through it, you know, like water flowing through pipes. Right? Where is the water going to go? Is there enough water for here? It's like plumbing for software development, basically. And here you'll see, in this particular case here, you probably won't see, you'll see some looping here, but you won't even see logos of apps. Why? Because we have automations running other automations. Right? This is where it gets really, really cool. And now we have automations running subroutines. And we now have accounts linking to other accounts. So now you can have a network of 50 accounts running each other's automation based on the solution. So it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I want to try to keep this, you know, simple with the demo we've done so far. But yeah, it's exciting. Pascal, Pascal's not here. I think he's asleep. He's in Switzerland. Robert, do you have any questions on how this works since you've built it?
No, but I'm curious to know what you have been planned for the next session.
Right. So I don't have anything planned. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted folks to tell us what they'd like us to talk about. So we're going to send some polls out before each class, but also I want to show, you know, full solutions that really showcase a lot of the functionality that we feel really sets us apart. So some of the things I definitely want to cover are bi-directional sync, because that's kind of an Achilles heel for integration platform. That's a big one. I want to also demonstrate storage of data. So, you know, writing into the database and then being able to retrieve, because that really augments the capability. So you don't have to make API calls all the time. I want to also demonstrate settings, how to separate the logic from the settings. So now you can build solutions that are appropriate for a whole set of users, each using it slightly differently without changing the automation, because you now separate the settings from the logic. For instance, do I send an email every 24 hours before a class, or a day before a class? That can be the person who's implemented the automations to decide outside of the automation. So now you can start upgrading these automations in bulk. So for instance, I'm invited to Zoom, you know, we can make some changes to the logic, and we can deploy the changes to 500 locations, all separate businesses from each other, right? But they're all using it slightly differently because they all have their own custom messaging, they all have their own custom timing and so forth. I also want to demonstrate looping. Looping to me and arrays is super, super, super powerful. What else would you like me to demonstrate, Robert?
Well, there's just so much. So I imagine there'll be a lot of sessions.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. But one of the common aspect of what I want to do in these sessions is I want to build something, right? Instead of just saying, this is how looping works, or this is how this works. I really want to start with nothing and end with something, just kind of like what we just did today. So if anybody is saying, hey, I need to be able to add Shopify orders with taxes and discounts and everything with a spreadsheet, they just learn how to do it, you know? Because I think that's important, to be able to walk away with takeaways, even if it's not necessarily appropriate to you. You learn so much through being able to see kind of like from an A to Z kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Penelope, what do you have any questions? What do you want us to demonstrate for you?
No, I don't. I'm probably the biggest novice on this team when it comes to all this technical stuff. So for me, it's just interesting from my perspective, watching you dive into the software and kind of watching how your brain works and how you move from one thing to another. I think it's interesting that this software can be used by people of all experience levels when it comes to this type of technology and building integration. So I'm excited to see what you come up with in the future. But for now, I think it's cool to have this foundation for all of our customers. I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned this. So the audience for these sessions on Fridays, um, you don't necessarily need to be a developer, right? You can be what we call a citizen integrator. So what's a citizen integrator? Citizen integrator is someone who understands what they want and how basic data flow would work, right? So if I have a first name here, I'd want it to end up as a first name here, and a first name is a string. It's not a number type field. If you understand these basic concepts, you can really build your own automations. What this is not, these trainings are not for, they're really not for your head of marketing who wants to integrate A to B, but they don't want to do it because they would get really bored with what we're doing. So it's anybody from a citizen integrator all the way to a full-fledged developer, because ultimately I also want to do different kinds of sessions to show you how to build what's behind the scenes. And I'll be showing this in a second, but I think we just got a question from some of our audience here. Do you see the question, Pen?
Yes, I saw something come up in the chat. Looks like it was 2 minutes ago. So it says from Travis Shannon, I'm interested in building an app for your marketplace. How do I go about doing this?
Okay.
Documentation or developer portal?
Right. So actually, it's funny. Travis. It's funny you asked this because I was just talking about that part. Let me share my screen and let me describe to you how this would happen. So going back to my little demo here. All right. So what I've shown you guys here right now is what we call the automation editor. The automation editor is where you build this stuff, right? The automation editor uses triggers above the action, and you can have more than one trigger, and then it also has actions. And these triggers and actions are either related to a specific app, right? Or they're triggers and actions that we've built that do different things, like converting data or whatever. So if you go to Apient, and then you click on apps, you can see all the apps we've already built triggers and actions for, okay? And then for each app, you can see how many triggers and how many actions we have. So for MindBody, we have 45 triggers and 68 actions, okay? So what you're talking about here, Travis, is how do you become one of those logos, right? How do you have your own logo up here? So first, let me show you how those things are built, and then we can talk about, how your logo would be up here. So if I right click here as a developer, because I'm logged in as a developer right now on the platform, or if you have your own platform, if I right click on here, I can actually open what is called the assembly editor. And the assembly editor is basically opening up these actions or these triggers, right? And opening the hood and seeing what's under the hood, seeing the whole engine, all the parts, right? So this is called find location by name. Let's look at a more complex one. Okay, so let's do order, add line item, tax line item here. So I'm going to say open this assembly. Completely different tool. In my opinion, 100 times more powerful than what I've shown you so far, right? But this is basically the oven that cooks the ingredients that makes the recipe. This is the oven right here. This oven this is where you create actions, and this is where you create triggers. And this is why this is just so powerful. So if you have a background in API development, you're going to be recognizing a lot of this stuff here. So here this is an assembly called order add line item tax line here for Shopify, okay? And then you can see that there's a bunch of things that are wired together, right? And this is all fully interactive with the API. Now, I'm not going to change anything here because I'm on the production and I don't want to mess with it because I know a lot of our customers are using this. But if you look at this here, you have two types of, in the assembly editor, you have two types of items. You have modules and you have assemblies. What is a module? A module, and let me just switch here to our development server because I get always very nervous when I'm going to close this and I'm going to go to our development server. So if I click something by mistake, I will not screw anything up, especially since Robert's staring at me right now. All right, so I'm going to open this on our development server, which we can break at will. It's encouraged to. And I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to open, it doesn't matter. I'm going to open anything. I'm going to open this one here. So back to the assembly editor on our development server, safe place to be. There are modules, and then there are assemblies. So a module is about 1 to about 200 different types of common task or code snippets you'd want to perform in a API integration scenario, right? So let me just show you an example of that. Okay, so if I do a search for OAuth, for instance, you see I have a OAuth 2.0 module, right? And if I click on it, you can see that this is an OAuth 2.0 module that can be used with other modules in an assembly, right? What is this? Well, this is nothing more but a bunch of code in a visual way that expects you to provide it data in order to perform the task at hand, right? So this is what this is here. And what are assemblies? Where assemblies are modules, wired up together. So if I look at this assembly here, new or updated class, this is a trigger. In MindBody, you can see that it looks slightly different than the other one. But this is basically your code base for what's happening between our server and the API. And assemblies can have sub-assemblies and so forth. But where does this become really, really powerful? Well, because some of these modules can serve some really powerful thing, solve some really complex problems. So if I did a search, for instance, for here's a trigger two-way sync module. So what's a trigger two-way sync module? It's, it's a piece of code, right, that will curate or regulate two-way sync integrations between a trigger and an action, right? So, and then it could be an add or an update, but there's a lot to it. So anytime you see an app in or an action in our, on our app listing here, and you see the word two-way sync, right? So here you'll see one called two-way sync add or update client. You can rest assured that if you open that assembly, it would have a two-way sync module, right? So now you can start seeing how this is very modular, but almost atomic in its nature. We start very low level by having modules patched together into assemblies. These assemblies become actions or triggers or connections to apps, right? These assemblies are now becoming actions and triggers that are put into automations. Automations are put together into templates. Templates are put together into integration apps. And then these integration apps become this. All right, so I think I've answered the first part of your question. But your real question was, I am interested in building an app for your marketplace. How do we go about this? Okay, so we currently we support 200, I think it's 280 apps. What is it? Currently we support 288 apps. And the reason we have these 288 apps and we don't have thousands of apps like some other platforms is because we dig in really, really deep with these apps. So if you look at, for instance, Donor Perfect, right? 23 actions, 6 triggers, but we have a partnership with Donor Perfect because we understand how Donor Perfect customers, what their problems are, what their pain points are, and we really dig in really deep into that vertical to understand what they want. We do the same thing with MindBody, with Apient, and other apps. So we currently are not adding any logos to our portfolio of apps currently. We can always have a conversation about it, but there is quite a bit of an effort that goes into doing that. Having said that, there are 2 parts to Apient. There is the cloud solution, which is, your users would basically become customers of Apient. So that's what we just talked about. But there's also the dedicated part of Apient, and that we haven't even talked about. So we also have customers who have Apient in a box, so to speak. So it's like completely white label with your own server in AWS or in Docker. And so if you wanted to add your app and you wanted to develop your app, talk to us. We can have a conversation, but that app would most likely reside on the dedicated, your own dedicated platform for you to expose to your users for them to consume. I hope that was a clear answer. Okay, anything else, Pen? Any other questions?
No other questions are coming up.
Okay, cool. I think we're gonna end here. That was great. We're gonna do this every Friday at 1 p.m. and then we're gonna also publish the recordings. I think we're gonna put them on our YouTube, and we're also gonna put the recordings on Facebook. And this was a lot of fun, and that's about it for me. Okay, thanks everybody. Cheers. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.